How do you even compare something like this? We're taking a look at two of the best weapons in the game period, top tier AoE beam weapons, the Ignis Wraith versus the Amprex. Now make no mistake, it doesn't really matter which of these two you choose, both of them are fully capable of cutting through Warframe like a hot knife through butter. So I'd recommend you give both of them a try. But surely one stands on top of the other, right? Hey guys, hello and welcome back. As always, my name is Lazar and I'm going to be putting these two powerhouses up against each other in a series of tests. I'm going to try to best highlight what are the advantages and disadvantages to each weapon, and hopefully by the end you're going to be able to tell exactly which of these two monsters you prefer. That said, let's start off by talking about how the weapons functions, because this is where most of the differences between these two will lie. The Amprex, now this one will channel a frontal beam, the range is 18 meters and you can increase the range with Sinister Reach. And as you can see, it's an electric arc of sorts. This arc is going to be able to chain to additional enemies. The range of the chain is 10 meters and you can hit up to maximum of 5 enemies. As you can see, this weapon is fully capable of annihilating high level targets without you even breaking a sweat. Now there is one thing that should be said, however. The chain loses damage every time it jumps. 50% of all damage is lost on each and every single jump. So in terms of AoE, while it does do a good amount of AoE damage, you're going to be losing a lot of damage quickly, again, in terms of AoE. That's pretty much it for the Amprex. Now let's take a look at how the Ignis Wraith function, but since we're here, let's have a stat comparison. The Ignis Wraith. Both of the weapons are format 8 times. I have full builds for both of them, and if you want to know the logic and the reasoning behind why this build and why not that build and so on and so forth, link in the cards right now if you want to see full and detailed reviews on both of these weapons. When it comes to the accuracy, it doesn't really matter all that much, simply because these are beam weapons, so heavy caliber's impact on them is minute. Critical chance is heavily in favor of the Amprex at 32% versus 17%. The critical multiplier, however, is backwards 2.5x for the Ignis Wraith, with the Amprex at only 2.2. The fire rate is 12 on the Amprex, much better than the Ignis at 8. Magazine of 100 versus 200. Keep in mind that both of these fantastic weapons are extremely ammo efficient, so if you want to play around with fire rate, go right on ahead for it. You might not even have to use carrier or other ammo regeneration methods. Now it's alarming for both a quicker reload and a much larger magazine capacity. So the Ignis Wraith has the edge when it comes to uptime. You are getting double the magazine size for basically almost half the reload time. That said, these are beam weapons, which means that per ammo you are getting 2 damage ticks and you're not starting off at 100% of the damage as soon as you pull the trigger. You're starting off at 20%, quickly ramping up to 100% over the course of 0.6 seconds. When it comes to the status chance, the edge once again goes to the Ignis Wraith, 29% versus 22%. Trigger health for both, heat, pure heat on the Ignis Wraith because, well, it is a flamethrower. As for the Amprex, we're looking at electricity. Now this matters when we take into account elemental combos because, for example, the Ignis Wraith can be pure radiation if that's what you need, and the Amprex can be pure corrosive. So therefore, for certain attacks, one will be better than the other by default. But let's take a look at that Ignis Wraith and see exactly how it functions. Now the beam on the Ignis Wraith is a lot longer. This is 27 meters by default, and keep in mind that you're going to be able to hit all of the targets within your range, all of the enemies without any damage drop. You remember on the Amprex, it loses 50% of its damage with each and every single arc, but this is not the case with the Ignis Wraith. As you can see, it's fully capable of destroying everything within its path. Now the beam is also quite thick, 0.15 meters I believe, and at the end of that beam you are generating an AoE zone with a 3 meter radius. So when it comes to AoE capabilities, by default, without any modification and all whatnot, the Ignis Wraith does have the advantage when it comes to AoE capabilities. Now let's see what builds we're going to be putting up one against each other. We're going to try for a standard build, an elemental build, and we're going to be talking about rivens as well. For the standard build, we're going to go with Serration, heavy caliber, because once again, being beam weapons, the negative accuracy doesn't really hurt us. Now, I wouldn't go for damage mods if you plan to use it with Chroma. If you want more details on that, check out my Rubica Prime build. Multi-shot with split chamber vigilante armaments, point strike and vital sense for critical chance, critical damage, and 2 elementals, high voltage and malignant force. Now these are the 60-60 mods. Depending on what weapon you choose to use, it's not exactly the best of ideas to go for 260-60 mods. Sometimes, depending on the level of content that you're doing, it's a good idea to drop to the 90 mods. I say drop, but again, it depends on the level. Generally, if you're going 100 under, I would just go for the 90 mods. So let's test it out. Standard builds, no riven, no anything. Level 120, corrupted heavy gunners. And let's see what the Ignis Wraith is capable of. As you can see, the weapon is absolutely fantastic and can tear through high level enemies like a hot knife through butter. Now, the Ignis Wraith was introduced into the game with a very specific event that no longer happens, but if you meet a nice guy, just ask for an Ignis Wraith blueprint. Honestly, they shouldn't really charge you plat for it. As you can see, I am fully capable of annihilating targets with extreme ammo efficiency. What is that? 80 ammo? Something like that. 85 ammo overall. That is pretty impressive for basically any weapon in the game, because this is AoE style. Now let's put the Amprex up against this one with the same build. But I do want to make a mention when it comes to the Amprex. Now this weapon has a tendency of overstripping depending on exactly what build did you use. I would recommend you drop one of the 60-60 mods and use a 90 mod. But for the sake of being fair, we're gonna go with two 60-60 mods with the same build as before. Corrupted heavy gunners level 120, you can spawn higher, it doesn't really matter all that much, the results will be mostly consistent. Take a look at that. When it comes to single target damage, you can't beat it. It's as simple as that. In order for me to beat the Amprex, I'm gonna have to rely on another weapon entirely. Look at that! See what I said about overstripping? Now this target, because it was hit with the additional beams, the chain beams, has all its armor removed, which means that my corrosive bonus, poof, is gone. When it comes to single target damage, once again, the Amprex clearly has the edge. When it comes to AoE capabilities, you go for the Ignis Wraith. But that's not the only build you can build, right? What about some Hunter Munitions potential? Well, Hunter Munitions is not a fair comparison between these two weapons because the base critical chance. But let's do it anyway, just for the non-believers and all whatnot. We got our mandatory mods, Hunter Munitions, and we also got Argon Scope and Bladed Rounds. Both of the weapons will operate better with Argon Scope and Bladed Rounds instead of a Viral Elemental combo. Check that in the full review and all whatnot. First up, the legendary Amprex. Now I'm gonna have to kill off a target in order to get my buff from Bladed Rounds, but with a slash build, normally what you wanna do to see if it's worth anything, hit a target till about 50%, then let the slashes deal the damage. As you can see, I completely murdered my initial target, but what about the AoE capabilities? Not much damage at all, sadly, because once again, per jump you are losing 50% of that damage. The second target took what, 20%, and then these guys barely took anything at all. But let's try to get the buff up from Bladed Rounds just to see exactly how much this weapon can do with a full-blown slash build. Now they're turning around because basically I'm crowd controlling them each and every time I'm firing because of the proc on the electricity that you get out of the Amprex. From my point of view, a weapon such as this doesn't shine with a slash build. There is a time and a place for Hunter Munitions, and this is clearly not it. Here we go, buff up from Bladed Rounds. Let's see the values. 1600 on a bleed. This guy maximum of 229 and 62 on this guy. You can go for an approach such as this. If bleed builds are your thing, you can try it like this, but it's certainly not as efficient as a full-blown elemental build. The problem with elemental builds lie in the fact that you gotta know exactly where you're going, who you're fighting, and mods need to be swapped out. And let's be honest here, who wants to swap their mods all the time? So you can go for something like this. It's a bit more comfy to use. Now that that's out of the way, what about the Ignis Wraith? With the buff from Argon Scope up, the Amprex does go to plus 100% critical chance, but the Ignis Wraith does not. Therefore, that will mean less slashes. But we do have higher AoE capabilities on the Ignis Wraith. Same build as before with Bladed Rounds and Argon Scope. Resimulate, same level 120 corrupted heavy gunners. No buffs on Harrow, by the way, it's an empty build. Now, because of the AoE capabilities, I can just stand all the way here and I'm gonna be able to hit all of these targets in a line. You gotta keep in mind that you do try to get that headshot multiplier, so careful how you aim your beam. As you can see, everybody will be dying to the bleeds, or most targets should be dying to the bleeds. It's a lot better when it comes to AoE, but neither of these two weapons will shine with a bleed build. You can get much better weapons for Hunter Munitions setup than these two. Alright, buff is up from Bladed Rounds, second column. Again, try to get those headshots. Try to aim slightly above through the head, but try to keep in mind how the beam goes through them as well. Lower values on the bleeds as well versus the Amprex. That was a 900, I believe. That was maximum. No overstrip because, of course, now we're not using corrosive, so we can't really overstrip the armor from our enemies. 1785, the highest bleed on the target. You can go for an approach such as this. I don't really recommend it, and I don't think this is where the weapon shines. Now let's talk about rivens and riven disposition, because rivens are a big part of Warframe. Everybody loves them and all whatnot. What is the disposition? We're looking at riven disposition of 2 for both of the weapons. Now I did try to get equally powerful rivens for both of them, but of course I failed. 38 rolls is not enough to get anything better than multi-shot electricity and status chance. When it comes to disposition of 2, some players consider that they're hardly worth getting, but from my point of view, they are still worth getting. There you go, it's entirely up to you. Both the Ignis Wraith, Ignis rivens and the Amprex rivens, however, are quite pricey, so bear that one in mind. Let's try it with the riven, and this is an elemental setup. As you can see, I'm going to be able to tear through these targets a whole lot faster than before. Certainly a whole lot faster than with a bleed build. But if I was shooting some flesh, then the bleed build would have helped me out a bit more. Monster. Absolutely bloody monster. It took like 100 ammo there, something like 100 ammo to completely annihilate everything. Now for the Amprex. Same riven disposition as before. It used to be free, but it did get nerfed. Keep in mind that Digital Extremes is thinking of updating riven disposition once every 3 months. So as long as these weapons are popular, the riven disposition is gonna go downhill rather quickly. Here we go, this is an Amprex Criticon with multi-shot critical chance and minus ammo maximum. Obviously, it's a lot better than the one I used on the Ignis. If you want an Ignis Riven, try to get that critical chance up. It is very important on it, and we're also going to be dropping one of the 60/60 mods, electricity. Let's go with Toxin. Again, because of the overstrip thing, I think it's better to go for a 90 and a 60/60. One more time, same targets as before, and now we're going to be drawing our conclusions. Like I said from the start, these are fantastic weapons, and I think you guys can see they are absolutely bloody amazing weapons. You're gonna have a wonderful time with any of these two. And it really kind of boils down to this. The Ignis Wraith has better AoE capabilities, no questions about it, but the Amprex simply deals a whole lot more single target damage. What if we were to play with a bit of punch through? Maybe we can increase those AoE capabilities on the Amprex, and one of the most fantastic mods you can use on this weapon is called Shred. Fire rate, we are ammo efficient, so therefore fire rate will be good, and a bit of punch through as well. We're going to be dropping in the standard build Vigilante armaments. A bit of fine tweaking here and there never hurt nobody, so let's see how it works like this. The punch through is working nicely. I am hitting multiple targets with the main beam, that's why I get more than 5 enemies hit. But look what happened. Overstrip galore in this case. Of course, overstripping will not happen if you shoot Corpus or anything like that. I am shooting, I'm going for body shots simply because if I was to go for headshots in a straight line, that might not actually hit the targets behind the initial target, so bear that one in mind. Fire rate on both of the weapons is fantastic. If you get it on a Riven, then awesome. What about the Ignis though? Let's go for the Ignis. Now the thing about the Ignis is that I shouldn't really be going for Shred on it, since I don't need a punch through. It's gonna hit all the enemies in a line anyway. So what I'm gonna be going for is as much fire rate as I can get, and that would be Vile Acceleration with 90% fire rate at the cost of 15% damage. Now that minus 15% looks a whole lot scarier than it actually is. It simply takes 15% away from your heavy cal or your serration. Also, if you noticed, in my Riven setup, I also used Vile Acceleration because the Riven allows me to use a single elemental mod to get my combo on and all whatnot. Every time you get a weapon that is fantastic at ammo efficiency, look to exploit that with some additional fire rate. Each and every single time it should prove a huge DPS increase. This is a standard build, nothing expensive here, and as you can see, the weapon can absolutely murder everything. Once again guys, you're not gonna be disappointed with one or the other. These are recognized as being top tier weapons. But when it comes to AoE capabilities, hands down, you gotta go for the Ignis Wraith. When it comes to everything else, including build diversity, then I gotta give it to the Amprex. And that's pretty much it. As always, my name has been Laser. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like, favorite, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. If you got any feedback for me, then by all means drop it in the comment section down below. Also in the comment section down below if you want to suggest a particular weapon review or versus. Keep in mind though that I can't exactly guarantee that it will be done by next time, but I will be reading through each and every comment. You can also find me on Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, all the usual places. Until next time, my friends. Bye bye.